And our final presenter for the session is going to be Dr. Lesley Ann Saketkoo, MPH. She is the founder and director of the New Orleans Scleroderma and Sarcoidosis Patient Care and Research Center in New Orleans. So, Dr. Saketkoo, we appreciate you joining us and take it away.
Thank you. It is really wonderful to be here. And Pam, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, wonderful. I am so grateful to be here and I am so proud of the Sarcoidosis Research Institute. It is a very unique organization, patient established, patient driven, and it remains closely aligned with patient priorities. And I'm so honored to be here today to speak about something that's so important to me and what I've learned on my journey as a human being and as a doctor, which is about being heard and how to navigate healthcare interactions. At last minute, I was able to, we just started putting up a website, but we created a soft opening for the sarcoidosis page that will web out into other topics related to sarcoidosis um, in our website called Heart, Lung, Muscle, Mind. And so please jump on there and get some of resources related to this talk. And this talk is going to be there um, in a PDF form. So thank you. So what we're going to talk about today is focusing on consider pathways where we align ourselves to understanding our own experience in order to be able to articulate it, whatever that is in terms of whether it's our symptoms, our meds, or something else, and articulating it in our own words and knowing that our own words are enough. And so these are going to become the pillars of our strategy to be heard and the pillars of fostering a thinking environment, not just for us and being able to communicate, but helping foster a space for our clinician to be able to think more broadly, think more deeply, think more openly. And so we're talking about minimizing noise and crystallizing what is important to us to convey in that period of time. And in the end, we're going to use pain as an example because that's a very important aspect to people living with sarcoidosis. And throughout this talk, very importantly, throughout anything we do, is that all of the strategies that we learn and all of the skills that we collect along the way, the most important way of managing and navigating is through self-kindness and supporting ourselves and finding those other beings out there that are supportive of us. And that, again, habituation, small steps. There's no grand light switch that we turn on and then we're masters of organizing our health. Everything is in increments. Every little thing is something that we habituate and we learn and we take on as a habit. And habituation is done through self-kindness and smiling at ourselves when things don't go as we'd hoped they go. Um, yes. So trying to get across what we hope to get across in a encounter with our clinician, especially if it's the first time. We have so much we want to say. We feel overwhelmed by what we're experiencing, and we don't even know where to begin. Um, and then when we finally get there, it's difficult to even hear anything because we're so focused on an outcome of what we're hoping for, as opposed to some steps that we've created for ourselves in our communication. And we find it might become difficult to express ourselves. I've been there. I know what that's like. And I'm a physician, right? And it becomes difficult to think. So we're going to look at some of these ways to help um, break this down and help us if we start to feel any of those things that, remember Dr. Gaynor's talk? If we start to feel any of these anxiety points or noticing that these wheels are spinning in one of these directions, noticing it and finding a way of coming back to ourselves, realigning, landing with ourselves again. Often that's listening to the breath in the body in a gentle way, so we can again feel a little bit more comfortable in our skin and be able to communicate. So, in clear communication, in healthcare, um, in a healthcare model, what we need to do is four things for clear communication in order to be heard. Number one is stating the problem. Number two, in order to be heard, we need to state the intensity of the interference that problem brings us. And the third thing we need to do is to be able to articulate the characteristics of that problem. And then, in order to be heard, we also need to demonstrate not just by what we say in an encounter, by what we do before we get to that encounter. And that's where habituation also comes in as being really important. And those things include knowing our medications and remembering and building off of the last plan with our healthcare provider. So this is these are the pillars of being heard, if you're asking me. And so how do we get there? Seeing the wood for the trees, taking some time for ourselves beforehand. It's the prep work. And it's that commitment. So, and calming this overwhelm is kind of getting to know ourselves, being able to take time to sit with ourselves when it's comfortable, sometimes riding through when it's not comfortable, sitting with ourselves, and naming, listing, describing, so that we have this vocabulary at hand for when we are trying to communicate it, and we communicate it better, and we're able to then ask for the help that we need. And communicating helps us have more control over what sometimes can seem to be this overwhelming monster outside of ourselves, which is this health condition. And giving it a name and giving it the space, so that we can understand it and work with it instead of battling against it, and get the help we need. So this might include taking time for yourself, walking, sitting, outdoors, indoors, just to settle the mind. Begin to name these sensations and concerns. As Dr. Gaynor was mentioning, even if you want to write it out, if you want to journal it, that's really great. Reorganizing it, making some haikus. Yeah, those 5 or 7 line poems. Find some pleasure in this, naming the sensations. Even if, like Dr. Gaynor said, is if you even dictating a memo to yourself through your phone. And important is support groups, hearing other people talk about it, finding other ways of looking at what we're experiencing, talking it out, and writing. And then this becomes the fodder. This becomes the substance that we can then organize and carry forward to our healthcare interactions and appointments. A book that I really like. I like this if you're a researcher. I like this if you're a patient. And its important premise is this time to think. Because in order to be able to think, we have to have some kind of spaciousness. And that goes for us. when we're trying to articulate what's going on for us. But that's also what happens when we're in an encounter with somebody. We are not responsible for somebody else's behavior, but if we can foster an interaction where we're stoking an environment that is more predisposed to thinking and allowing our clinician to have some spaciousness of mind in order to think better, think more spaciously, think in a more problem-solving way, that is what we want to be about. So our goal is a proactive problem-solving interaction sphere, microcosm, protected space. And that happens before our visit, that time with ourselves, between visits, that time with ourselves where we befriend ourselves in a space that's uncomfortable, namely the fact that we might have a health condition. So befriending ourselves in that space, and also in our communication strategies, having that proactive problem-solving intention, and in communicating and understanding with the clinician that we have, because we want to be heard and we want a solution. We want a solution to our problems. But we have to remember who we're talking to, and we have to optimize their experience in order to be heard. So they are a person that lives with extreme time pressures. So we're trying to use their time wisely. We're working under extreme workloads. So we want to be proactive in our own patient responsibilities. And we want to, they're somebody that's continuously triaging their energy and their focus in life-threatening complications. So we want to be clear and succinct in order to make that happen. And especially with these tricky symptoms where there's no easy answer, and that really does require lateral thinking, pain, fatigue symptoms. These require time and thought. And so therefore, whatever we can do to help create a thinking environment for that person, the better. So let's look at some of these approaches. Now, having said that, I want to be clear that our expectations are a respectful, non-dismissive care. This is what we can expect as patients. Direct communication between clinicians. We hope that our specialists are going to be talking to each other, and that should be an expectation. We should expect reasonable solutions. That might include second opinions, referrals, ability to talk through potential options, the word options for treatments. And we should expect to have clear expectations in further understanding the disease, investigations, and treatments. So on the same token, but the flip side, we have to understand something about our unconscious influences in our own communication, what triggers us, the frustrations that are boiling underneath. Because what we want to do is we want to avoid that encounter becoming a venting session for everything that happened to us along the way, and less of a problem-solving experience, right? So we really want to be careful about noticing when we're misplacing anger and frustration because of, that were warranted, but were paved by past healthcare experiences. Be careful about unloading this frustration regarding just even having a healthcare condition. Of course, we feel angry to some extent. We feel regret because we think, was there something I could have done? There's so many reasons that we can come to the table feeling angry about even the presence of having a condition. Our frustration with self over our own organization or communication. Um, it, these are and having and carrying depressive symptoms, letting them interfere without recognizing them, making a healthy place for the fact if we're depressed or experiencing depressed symptoms, that can really help keep depression from getting into the way of our communication. So practicing recognizing where our voice and actions within an encounter are coming from. And then just try to notice it, breathe, and gently redirect what's not helpful. I love this book. I've read so many books about, and there's so many great books out there, but in this vein of what we just mentioned, if there's one book that that I would recommend of all the great books out there, it would be this one, Don't Bite the Hook by Pema Chodron, who is a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She's so funny, funny, funny. She's self-deprecating. You can get this on audiobook. It's very inexpensive, or from your library through Libby or Storytel if you happen to be in Europe. This is wonderful, and it's helped me so much. So it's important to keep in mind the extreme burden of the healthcare practitioner, and we want as much as possible to be prepared for our visit and recognize that visit that you're having, that time with the clinician, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the work that happens after each encounter that the physician is responsible for. And oftentimes that comes in weekend hours, hours that they could be sleeping. And that's for each visit. So that's not to make anybody feel bad, but that's just to create some ground of understanding. Is critical. Try not to get frustrated if you're asked the same questions again. Notice our resistance and again, soften, smile at ourselves, breathe, and redirect. And it's important to remember that our clinicians are humans. You never know what's going on for them. They have kids in trouble just like everyone else. They're caring for elderly parents just like everyone else. They, in fact, may be living with really complex health conditions just like everyone else. And remember that the staff you meet in the lead time to getting the doctors themselves, they're not their staff. And so the sentiments conveyed by the staff, please remember that that may not be from the doctor themselves. So the clinician's interactions, again, what we want to know about the cycle of an encounter is communicating a problem. There's further query, questions, or tests that may be ordered. That's the second stage. Then a suggestion for management and the implementation of management. And then comes the follow-up. That's the visit that comes next after this encounter that we're focused on now. And that's the reassessment. And this visit is going to be really important for us to demonstrate that yes, we are involved, we are engaged, and we are thinking, and we are serious about the encounter. So state the problem. Stating our problem. So prior to the visit, we want to identify those problems, the what, and then the what's, not the what, the what's, because there's more than one. And for us, we want to list the rank of what problems are most important. And we want to spend time. This is that time with ourselves that may be difficult. Breathe through it. Do it in modules, do it in increments, but spending the time learning to describe each of those major issues that concern us. Ways to do this, again, calming the overwhelm, being able to see the wood for the trees by spending time with us, naming the problem, listing, describing. Our words and how we describe them are good, they're important. What this does do is it helps us manage the psychological impact of the disease in addition to articulating ourselves in an encounter. It allows these overwhelming things related to the condition to have less control over ourselves and really enable us to get help by developing vocabularies, by developing lists. So, naming sensations, concerns, slowing down the mind, walking and sitting with this. Outdoors is a great place to find mind settlement. Walking is a great place for musing these ideas. And again, support groups, talking it out and writing is critical. So that's stating the problem. Next. We want to state the intensity of the interference that we're experiencing in our lives for each problem, for each of the problems that we rank. So we want to avoid trying to convince. We want to stay calm. We want to call to mind great civil rights leaders and how they are communicating in calm, sitting well in ourselves, sitting in the truth. You don't need to convince anyone because your truth is the truth. You want to avoid the noise of convincing because it saves time for solutions. Try to use a scale of 0 to 10 to the degree to which something interferes in your life or creates distress. On a scale of 0 to 10, this fatigue that I'm experiencing creates a level 8 of distress in my life, or interferes with my life at a level of 5, or it interferes with my ability to work in a level 8. And so on and so forth. So try to marry a scale with how much or where that symptom is interfering for you. And this work has to be done ahead of time. You need to sit with yourself in that space of alignment with yourself to do this work ahead of time. And that should be done for each of your major concerns. Secondly, articulating location, quality, timing of and how these measures are alleviating, and your desire for a plan, meaning a management, what you're expecting from the clinician. Step back and see the symptom from outside oneself when we journal, when we walk, as we discussed in the previous slide. Take inventory. It could be an inventory of haikus, listing, vocabularies, poems, just straight up journaling, and see what one sees from this view. It helps to describe the physical symptoms clearly. It may be uncomfortable because we don't like to think or state that something's wrong with us. We may hope it will get done and taken care of. But we really cannot only do this. We can only do this with investment. So it's a habituation of how we're engaging with this thinking and building. We are part of this. Do this work ahead of time for each major. So we state the intensity. Be engaged. Come with your notes to explain what's going on for you. Refer to your notes and take notes during the visit. Again, use the scale of 0 to 10 to talk about how life is how this symptom or problem is interfering with our experience. And we want to, I think I messed up on that last slide because when we're, I, well, but when we're being engaged, we want to call up what happened between now and then. Are we still taking our meds? That's a way of showing we're being engaged and should be part of your notes. Are you taking your meds? It's okay if you're not. Why did you stop? Be honest. You've got to be honest. If how did the management from the last visit pan out for you? Did you have to modify it? How did it go? If you didn't have time to do this work, be honest about that. Say, listen, from our last visit to now, I just didn't have time to really pay attention to the plan, to try to pay attention to the treatment effects, and whether or not, as Dr. Sharp says, which I do also, take that one thing in your life that impacts that symptom. For example, going up that hill to the mailbox. It got a lot harder, or it got so much easier since I started the methotrexate. And remember, when it comes to discussing treatment, taking the time to consider a treatment is okay, to get your time to get your thoughts together. You want to ask about how urgent is my situation to the clinician? Can I leave this room and have time to think about it? Um, and you want to be careful and notice your avoidance tendency, right? Denial. Denial is not just the river, right? So we want to proactively make another appointment to discuss things further if it's not an urgent situation. And getting a second opinion is perfectly fine. In terms of visit prep, questions again, write them down, be honest. We talked about that. Medications, know them, bring a list. Something to do every day is as you're taking your medicine, say it out loud. Say that medication out loud. Then you can begin to say the milligrams of each tablet and how many tablets. And request, be ready. Know whether you need refills at the appointment. These things are really, these things really signal that you're engaged. You're an engaged partner. There are no stupid questions. Remember honesty, notice your resistance, soften and breathe, and communicate what's important to you. This was discussed by Dr. Sharp. One thing to remember in any discussion of shared decision making, there's so many mimics of sarcoidosis, and that the diagnosis of sarcoidosis in itself is a probability. And so many patients have had a diagnosis of sarcoidosis that actually ended up being something else. So between us and the clinician, we want to keep a thinking environment, keep the probability of that question being open. Okay. And this is very important. Not everything we're experiencing is related to this very dazzling, very impressive diagnosis called sarcoidosis. Every one of us, no matter whether it's sarcoidosis, lupus, scleroderma, vasculitis, you name it, these people walk into an ER and everyone is, or the primary care physician is dazzled by that diagnosis. Everything they experience that doesn't have an immediate answer, gets relegated to sarcoidosis. Please remember, what is common in people with dazzling diseases. We are talking about heart cardiovascular involvement, pneumonia, infectious pneumonia, you name it. We need to be treated like everybody else. And that you must keep in the forefront of our minds when we're discussing. I wanted to go through this just to give an idea of the things the framework to think about when we're thinking about our symptoms. But this will be on the website, and I know this is going to be circulated by Miss Polite. But this is a framework that we want to think about when we're journaling, when we're walking, to be able to describe clearly in order to be able to articulate and convey what we're experiencing so we could help the clinician narrow things down and we can help them find better questions to help them understand what's going on for us. Pointing to parts of our body is really important. Do this ahead of time. Understand how a symptom maps in your body. Use your finger. Point in your body is really important. Okay, qualities, descriptions, throbbing, tingling, burning, shooting. These are just some adjectives, some describers. But there's so many, and the ones that you use and come up with, if that works for you, I'm sure it's going to work for a clinician to understand what you're trying to say. Again, more framework in going to the symptom part, pain, in alleviating, aggravating possible attributes. Again, another framework here. Any idea what caused it? Like you have chest pain. Oh, this happened after a coughing spell. Huh, you might have a broken rib. So these are the things that we can convey. Does anything make it better? Yeah, a little bit of of Tylenol helps. These things help the clinician understand. Patterns of timing. These are also important considerations when we're journaling, when we're listing, to be able to create a framework of understanding for each symptom. again. This is again the same framework I just showed you on the other page. Again, I'm a time optimist, so I include more slides than I always should. Remember, everything that we do is based on this friendliness to ourselves. And in my mind, this is a really great paradigm of mindfulness, of bringing our attention back in a friendly way to the object of what we need to focus on. And often that's tied to the sensation of the breath in the body to help us ground. And when we go off on a tangent, come on and bring it back again. Listening to the body helps us be articulate. Resting the mind and the body helps us be articulate. And one thing I want to impress upon everyone is, again, like the avoidance of biting the hook, take nothing personally. Why? Whether it's the staff that's answering the phone, whether it's the clinician themselves. If somebody's abusive, get a new clinician. But we all have bad days. Take nothing personally. Taking things personally, we know science has told us, creates significant harm in mental health. It creates a negative feedback loop and increases the risk for anxiety, depression, and burnout, and decreases self-esteem, which makes it difficult for us to sit with ourselves and be our best navigator. The more we practice, depersonalization, self-friendliness, spaciousness of mind, smiling at ourselves, smiling at our mistakes, and giving a breath, making our first word a breath, also called the third moment in Buddhism, helps to reignite neural pathways and mental health. And these neural pathways and our mental health is laid and strengthened by what we choose to feed it, right? So if we choose to smile at ourselves in the face of adversity and in our own mistakes, if we choose to practice taking a self-friendly stance, if we choose to make our first word a breath to ourselves, ease becomes more immediately available for us, and then ease is more available for us when we need it. And for growing a more baseline ease. And I will just add, and I know I'm over time, but I will just add that these pathways that we're talking about, there've been significant studies in rheumatoid arthritis. So we know that when we get stronger in these pathways, pain that is residual after treatment, fatigue that is residual after treatment in people that we believe have been treated and treated optimally, those symptoms tend to get better because there are pathways related to our pain experience and fatigue experience that we can help redirect and help refortify. Again, so many wonderful books out there, but if you're only going to choose a few to kind of think about these pathways, Pema Chodron is a great beginning. And Humor, Gentleness, and Patience. Again, this is the QR code to that page for our soft opening. And I will say thank you. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Are you there?
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Saketkoo. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for all that helpful information. We appreciate you being part of our session, and we appreciate all the good tips and advice. And I'm sure many of the people watching and listening picked up some great pointers from you. Thanks again.
Thank you.